Hello friends, how's it going? Welcome inside to League Unlock. Eric and Mark with you guys as we continue the countdown of the player rankings for the first ever split of the LEC. I think I'm finally getting used to calling it that.
Yeah, it's definitely going to take a while to get used to saying LEC, but hey, you got to remember now, NA is the only and the best LCS around.
Cut the NA.
So perfect.
LCS.
Yeah. But let's get right into some LEC rankings.
Yeah, we're going down into the bottom lane now where there was quite a bit of shift in that bottom lane. We'll start with the AD carries. You've got a couple of rookies coming into the LTS. Obviously, you got the big swap for G2, which has been the talk of the entire offseason in Europe, and deservedly so. And if you recall, earlier in the week, Riot was looking to do some player rankings, and you could vote, and they had locked in top 3 players for each role, and Perkz was one of those. Well, he's not in the top 3 on our 80 carries, but we'll get there in a sec. Coming in at number 10 is Jeskla for Excel Esports. He's coming in from the Movistar Riders. He's played in the minor regions for EU. He's still a young guy. Maybe he can develop, but haven't seen enough. He's in at 10.
Right, and especially moving into the professional stage for the LEC and the level that it's going to be there, the level of competition that you're going to be going up against every single match and what it requires of you and requires from your skill set. I think that this is certainly going to be a step up, a learning experience for Jeskla. I would keep your expectations low.
And I just want to say, with this 10-6 that we have, no Hjarnan. He could definitely be an upgrade over a lot of these guys. The only thing I can reason why he's not on Rogue with his old buddy Wadid in that bottom lane, and it's Hikyu instead, is they signed Hikyu really early on. Maybe they weren't expecting Hjarnan to be available, but he would be an upgrade over some of these guys. Hikyu did have some decent games in 2018, but he was far from the featured carry on that Roccat squad.
Right, and you have to remember the inconsistency that you saw with Hikyu as the carry there for that roster. He was not able to provide the damage consistently enough, play smart enough to make things work for them and carry that team. Not the type of guy that I would really want to be moving forward with there as far as Rogue starting out here in the LEC. As you mentioned there, only can speculate on the likes of a Hjarnan type of situation, but you would have to think there are upgrades available.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Even try some of these minor region guys. I feel like you know what you're getting with Hikyu now, whereas with a guy at number 8 for SK Gaming in Crown Shot, who was on Mad Lions with the likes of Nemesis, now on Fnatic. 4/5 of their starting roster, by the way, in the LEC for 2019. And the reason he's higher than the likes of Jeskla and Hikyu is really he was featured more as a carry in a lot of these games for Mad Lions. Funny enough, Jeskla was the AD carry before Crown Shot on Mad Lions, but he looked, he took over some of these games when it wasn't Nemesis popping off, and really just the utter dominance that Mad Lions showed throughout the European Masters and in their minor region league that they've played in. They look good, and really the entire roster deservedly so in the LEC.
Right, and there's not much to add on here about actual Crown Shot's actual skills and what he's going to be able to provide for his team here. But the thing that you do mention there with the Mad Lions is that you have to respect the European region on how they're able to bring up talent the way they have for years now, even with players signing those big contracts in NA last year, keeping the talent pool strong. And you see that again with a lot of these Mad Lions players, and Crown Shot is one of them here, moving on to the LEC stage.
In at number 7, we have Patrick, and if you're thinking, well, who the hell is Patrick? It is Sheriff from H2K last year to the terrible 1-17 start that they had. Start, finish, middle, the entire split was one to forget. Sorry, they won 2 games. Trying to downgrade them. They won 2 games, 2-16, not 1-17. But, I mean, you look more so at the spring split. I almost want to write off summer because when your team is struggling that badly, I don't really know what you're supposed to do as an AD carry, regardless of how talented you are. But in spring, you could see the potential there, the ceiling for this guy. He's on Origin now with a much, much, much better roster than H2K. He's surrounded by veterans, and I think we're going to be talking about him much higher on this list come the summer split.
Right, heading into last year, Sheriff was one of the ADCs you had to keep your eye on in the European region, knowing that there is the potential there for him to develop even further, and we didn't see exactly the type of development that we wanted. You saw bits and pieces of it in that spring, and then everything fell apart in that horrible summer for H2K. And you need to think about, well, who are we getting here? Is it going to be the Sheriff from spring? Is it all of a sudden this new Patrick player that we don't know anything about here? No, my expectation is it will be a lot closer to spring Sheriff that we saw from before, and I think when you're keeping Sheriff in mind, Patrick, you have to remember that this is now a time that we're going to be seeing a lot again. Mages in the bottom lane, and I thought that was something that he struggled with during the summer split, so I don't know if he's going to get that start right away that he wants to, but he has the potential to keep climbing.
Yeah, I feel like him and Mythia are either going to dominate, be one of the better bot lanes, or really struggle. Let's get to the juiciest one on the list, Mark. Perkz in at number 6, and I mentioned this Riot listing that they did beforehand where he was locked in as a top 3 AD. You couldn't vote, you couldn't change him out of there along with Hansama and Reckless. I don't know if they're memeing, just having some fun. There's no way you can immediately put Perkz in the top 3. I even struggled to put him above the likes of Patrick because of what we saw with him in his debut split in the LCS.
Right, and now this is not talking about the individual talent that someone like Perkz has. We know,
incredible.
We've seen it, we know all about it. The thing here now is the transition to a new role, what is required from you. And yes, certainly he has shown us on some marksman champions some proficiency, but that is entirely different from being able to work back to front in team fights like an AD carry should, and as well, how to handle the laning phases and the pressures that you will be getting down there as well from those duels and the jungles there's helping out. I think that this is a different ball game for Perkz, and we start him off at number 6. You have to have him there. You can't disrespect the other ADCs here in Europe, putting him above them.
Yeah, guys that have been playing the position for years, and there's so many things outside of just raw mechanics and team fighting when it comes to playing AD carry on a professional team. We'll see how he's able to deal with when to be at what lane, when to push, because a lot of the time you're just going to be a siege bot to take down turrets. We'll see how he fits into the macro aspect of the game. But again, Perkz is another guy who maybe by summer we're saying, wow, he can do this easily. Top 3, he's the best AD carry on the planet. But right now, we got him in at number 6. Hello, you beautiful beings of this wonderful planet. Welcome to League Unlock. Eric and Mark with you guys as we're continuing the countdown for AD carries in the LEC. We're into the top 5 for what we expect for 2019 spring. We just had Perkz at number 6. He did not crack our top 5 because he hasn't played the position professionally in his entire career.
Yeah, we're not Riot Games. We're not putting Perkz automatically into the top 3. That's crazy. Nope. Show some respect to these EU ADCs and the talent that they've got, the talent that they've been developing for all this time. Time to break down the top 5.
All these guys that have been playing the role professionally and been for years and been the featured carry on their squad. Starting at number 5, it's Kabe on Splyce, the only member still from that original Splyce roster. He's been there for a while. In 2018, you really saw him step out because he was hardly the featured go-to win condition on previous rosters of Splyce, but in 2018, he was the guy, and Perkz may be better mechanically, but Kabe's been a fantastic AD carry throughout all of 2018.
Consistency is what you want to be talking about with Kabe. Yes, you're not getting some of these flashy, completely dominating performances that the likes of a Reckless or a Hansama can dish out, but the consistency that the likes of Kabe is able to provide, and able to provide you that condition that if your team is able to extend games out, you will have a carry that has scaled up properly, has the items, and is able to dish out the damage responsibly in these team fights. That's what Kabe brings you here. And yes, last year on Splyce, Kabe did end up being the guy that had to be the carry, the main win condition, a lot more often than he's used to in his career, and he was able to step up a little bit more often than I would have expected him to. So I think that this year, look for even more growth from him in 2019.
And it's just another year where he'll have an entirely new roster, save for Xerxes, around him to develop new synergy with. Number 4 is Attila. He took down the god himself, Uzi, and he pulled out a Draven to do it. At times, we know how aggressive this guy is, but there were plenty of games where either Jizuki was having a tough game or just not bringing it in team fights where Attila was there to completely pop off and carry some games for Vitality.
Yeah, aggression is what you want to be thinking when you're talking about Attila in the bottom side. He is not scared of any opponent or any type of situation.
And he'll let you know about it.
Oh, absolutely. The man's is going in and he's going to be trying to dish out the damage to do so. Yes, it hasn't worked out at times for him. We've seen him get humbled a little bit at certain situations where the aggression backfires. But I love that he's able to get right back up the next match, get right into it, and make those type of calls, make those decisions and moves there. This is a bloodthirsty ADC, and I look for Attila to be out for more blood this year.
Top 3 rounded out by Upset, who, again, I'm going to hunker back to that Riot listing. They didn't have Upset in the top 3. The first team all-pro AD carry from the summer split, a guy who he turned it on to another level the second half of the regular season when Schalke made their run. And during the playoffs, save for maybe that final game where he misplays the final team fight against Fnatic in Game 4. Save from that game, he was incredible throughout Schalke's entire run.
Right, and this is someone who didn't have, again, a lot of experience heading into this year from the past, and so you have to respect what he was able to dish out there last year.
He had a lot of hype around him, though.
And that's the thing. There was a lot of hype there, but a lot of the gameplay, week in and week out, it backed up that hype. And that is the important thing. Even with that hype there, was able to perform. And heading into this year now, as you've seen the success that he was able to have towards the end of last year, pushing Schalke as far as they can go, I want more from him this year. Needs to step up and be the guy to be a top-level AD carry here from Europe.
Yeah, especially with this new Schalke lineup, and he's the only returning member from 2018. I think there's going to be added pressure, maybe even more so than what he had in 2018 as that hyped up, highly anticipated rookie, because he's going to be the go-to guy on this squad. And then we go on to the top 2. Hans Sama, the start, when Misfits were 9-0, he was the best AD carry in Europe, especially because Rekkles wasn't even playing.
Yeah, at a time where you did not see Rekkles playing, you saw him on the bench, taken away due to the mages. Hans Sama was the guy stepping up and was the premier AD carry for the majority of the year in Europe, able to find ways to dominate with different champions. Even, hey, I gotta say it, we saw some ugly Vladimirs, cough, double-list Vladimir here in North America. Hans Sama's Vladimir and other mages down there looked a lot better.
He barely played them, by the way. He
did.
just said, I'm just playing AD carry.
And that was the thing. He managed to get a handle on them, play them well enough, and then say, you know what, though? These AD carries aren't too bad, and I'm pretty darn good at them. Throw me back on the Xayah, things like that. Hans Sama is a dangerous man down there in the bottom side. Don't be fooled by his cute looks. This man will take you down every time.
He got a new haircut, and he's looking good. But in at number 1, of course, it is Rekkles. He's actually playing in 2019. No SOAS, no caps, which means we'll probably be seeing a lot more featured playstyles around Rekkles, as Fnatic has done for years and years. And at Worlds, and when he came back into the lineup, it seemed like he didn't miss a beat. He was back to his former self with 80 carries back in the meta. And I mean, he's been the best AD in Europe for years now.
Yeah, and the important thing with Rekkles at number 1, gotta be playing ADs for me. I don't think that the mages is there, or that
there's no Whippo to sub in.
Right, or even if he really wants to be playing these type of champions, if that is the meta there, you have to be looking at it. But even in those times where Rekkles didn't seem to be the premier carry for Fnatic at Worlds, stepped up when it mattered the most, when these games were extending out there, Rekkles was there, he was powerful, and he was always in control in these team fights, staying away from the damage and moving in at the right time to pop the other team's health bars. That's exactly the type of skill that Rekkles brings to your team, that security that he can bring to your lineup, and that is why he has to be our number 1 player in the European region.
And I think we saw him flash aggressively forward more in 2018 than the rest of his entire career combined. He's only gotten better year to year, and I think finally he's discovered when the calculated aggression can work out to his favor. And yeah, a lot of those team fights, he was hard carrying.
Right, and hey, this is a guy going to Worlds and being in that final and being so close to having that success that he's always wanted here. You know that it's just going to drive him and Fnatic even further in 2019.
A new year for Fnatic and new tattoos for Rekkles, which means he's extra ready to pop off. Maybe get back another MVP. Coming up after the break, the unsung heroes of those AD carries. We're looking at the best supports in EU for 2019.